Today on Plastic Weekly, I host a group of gym owners and head route setters to talk about the SheSets Symposium, what makes a perfect boulder, fostering female talent, and managing diverse crews. Stick around. So if you haven't heard, I've started up a Patreon for Plastic Weekly, which is basically a way for you to donate a bit of money to help support this podcast. I was really lucky to work at a gym that sent me all over for conferences and clinics and competitions, and I learned so much every time I attended something new. And I brought back cool ideas that really changed the business for the better. In my opinion, every gym should be sending their employees to events like the CWA Summit or setting clinics, or even just buy their employees day passes at other gyms to see what else is happening around them. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, but I hope the conversations we have on Plastic Weekly help to fill that void. I want every episode to share some new bit of industry information that helps you make climbing better in your community. If you think this podcast is helpful, please consider making a small recurring donation on my Patreon by visiting plasticweekly.com and clicking the donate button. I've made some cool stickers that are exclusively for Plastic Weekly guests and supporters, and you need to be a donor before next week's episode comes out to receive your stickers in October. So check it out, maybe donate at the link on our website or directly at patreon.com/plasticweekly. This week's episode is my favorite so far. The four women I'm about to introduce are not just leaders in their own cities, but industry leaders who are shaping route setting and indoor climbing across the United States. Their insight into route setting, management, and gym culture is extremely valuable, and women from across North America got to hang out with them and set some sweet boulders at the SheSets Symposium early in September. Enjoy. And right now on Skype, I've got four women with me to talk. First of all is Nicole Brown, and she's the SheSets founder and CEO of LEF and Mosaic Climbing Gyms in Lexington, Kentucky and Cincinnati, Ohio. Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
As well as three clinicians from the SheSets Symposium. Danielle Goodspeed of Crimpers Climbing in Christiansburg, Virginia. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, Tyler.
Also, Christine Deyo of the Austin Bouldering Project in Austin, Texas. How you doing, Christine?
Good. How are you doing, Tyler?
Not bad. And Jackie Hueftle of the Spot Bouldering Gym in Boulder, Colorado. Nice to finally talk to you, Jackie.
Yeah, you too, Tyler. Thank you for doing this.
No problem. And Nicole, since you got this whole thing started, we have to start with you. And we'll start with a really simple question. What inspired the SheSets Symposium?
Well, it's multifold. So I started climbing about 7 years ago. After I got into it, I was really interested in learning some more about setting, potentially as a career and not, maybe just as a volunteer. So I tried to get my foot in the door at a few different gyms spread around the country because we were fairly mobile at that point. And I faced a lot of opposition. Now I have to say, I didn't pay my dues. I wasn't climbing, working part-time in a gym and then approaching the setting team. I just kind of jumped in, tried to apply as a setter. And I never even got so much as an interview and rarely even got a response. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then once we started the gyms, I just noticed that we received very, very few female applicants, basically really regardless of the position, but especially in the setting world. So I wanted to investigate a bit. Really, SheSets was just a way for me to learn more from women directly, why they weren't setting, if it was truly a lack of desire, if they were facing some opposition the way I did. So SheSets was born.
Now, the event took place, is it 2 weekends ago now? It was September 7th through 9th, right?
Correct. It was the weekend before last.
Yeah, so a 3-day event. Nicole, could you walk me quickly through everything that took place over those 3 days?
Sure. So the first day, once again, we hit the ground running. We started off with the Showdown, which is a 2-day event. And we also, at the same time, offered an intro to route setting clinic for women who had very minimal experience or perhaps no experience at all. And that was also a 2-day clinic. After those 2 days, we wrapped things up with clinics from all of our instructors. So Danielle, Christine, Jackie, and a few other volunteers. Louis Anderson, my husband, Chris Shotwell, and Blake Allen Green. And that took up basically the rest of the final day. And we sent people off.
All right. I think most listeners are probably familiar with what a setter showdown is, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But you mentioned that you were running an intro to route setting clinic for those 2 days as well. And from what I understand, Danielle, you were one of the instructors for the intro to setting clinic?
Correct, I was.
I'm really curious what kind of women came out for that clinic. First of all, was it mostly locals or did you attract from elsewhere? But also, what kind of confidence did they have about their prospects for route setting when they came in? Was it something that a lot of them considered to be just a hobby, or were there some people that wanted to hopefully get into the profession?
First, the ladies were from all over. There was even a mother and daughter from Mexico. So I think there was a good representation from women from different areas. And I think a lot of them were beginners. Some had set once or twice, they said. And there were a couple who were more intermediate, but I think in general they were beginner setters with minimal experience. And I feel that when we had our group discussion during lunch the second day, I do feel that most of the women did want to enter the industry professionally. That was their hopes. It wasn't just a side little fun thing they wanted to do. I think that they were quite serious in their aspirations.
Okay. What kind of topics would you cover in that clinic?
Everything. I think the intro class was very intro, just even how to use an impact driver. And I think one of my main inspirations for that was ironically at the Setter Showdown, the first one I went to, the guys are just like, "Rrr," and I'm like, that's not going to work. And I wanted to teach the women that it's not all force. And so that was actually my inspiration for the intro outline that I had, was to start with the most subtle things that you might take for granted. Like you might just assume they know how to use the impact driver and put a bolt in. But I wanted to start from the very basic stuff and show them the subtlety of that.
Okay. Years ago, you and I did USAC level 1 clinic together, and that's kind of where I started to get to know you. I'm curious if your experience doing that course kind of affected how you taught this one, if it was something in your mind.
Oh, it incorporated some of that, but mine was much more detailed. And I think it did assume a bigger lack of experience with respect to setting than the Route Setter 1 course.
I mean,
Okay.
you're talking about the difference between a competition level 1 setting course that assumes people are already setters that want to set for these competitions. And what Danielle was doing was women who've never, most it seemed like who had never set before.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
that's absolutely fair.
Well, and that's a big problem I think USA Climbing has faced, is that they made this system for competition setters that want to go up their competition setting structure, and then there's no other outlet for, well, there hasn't been, there is now, but for learning those skills. So people were taking those clinics just to take a clinic.
Yeah,
That's why
absolutely.
I initially took it. Yeah.
Okay, so there's been a bunch of setter showdowns. So this is the first all-female event, and I'm curious, for the couple of you that have been to these before, how did the problems differ from those previous events? Just considering this was all women.
Used to be easy to pigeonhole female setting into like, oh, it's going to be more technical or more crimpy or whatever. And I actually sort of expected a little bit of that, but the other thing happened, which is that women often, in my experience, will set like the style. There's no women's style anymore. You know, women are climbing these gyms all the time, and we're setting the same thuggy, bouldery boulders that you'd expect men to set. So I really don't think that anybody could tell what gender the setters were based on the problems that were up. And then to me, between the 3 events I've done, I definitely wasn't like, oh, these are super female. Even though I think part of the goal of these things is to say like, hey, women are making up 50+% of, you know, gym customer populations right now. If half your customers are women now, and women are coming to climbing with different skill sets and different things they're better at first, shorter reaches and things like that, you know, we need to be serving those things too. And what's kind of happening, I think, is that a lot of the female setters, whether it's because they just work with men and they're trying to fit in or understand those things, or just what they enjoy climbing as well, are setting climbs that are more, again, more brutal, more thuggy, even have long moves on them, things that traditionally we don't think of as female style. So yeah, the problems in this particular setter showdown to me were no different than the problems in any other setter showdown I've been. If anything, they were, you know, one of the setter showdowns I went to, like half the people there had just been to some clinic about doing that move where you jump into like a gas stone press, and they were putting them on everything. So there was like gas stone presses on V2s. It was like super inappropriate. And there was none of that tomfoolery at this event.
Also, Jackie, it's hard to be crimpy when you have those mega kilter jugs.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Right.
point, Danielle. The holds also dictate what people are setting, and the hold sponsors for the event were Volks, and Thrive and Kilter, and of course, the hold. We didn't. It's not like the hold sponsors chose the holds. The gym had ordered some holds for their new gym. They were going to use those for the event because that's usually how it works. Turned out they had to move it to their old gym, but they still brought the holds down. So, you know, the setters have to work with whatever holds they're given to. And in this case, there were a lot of big, cool holds, which is fun. Everyone loves setting with those.
I want to kind of run through the topics that each of you discussed at the symposium. Christine, your clinic was called Forerunning, and I'm curious what it was you were talking about in that class.
Actually, more focused on setting as a design process, but then zeroing in on the part of setting that is forerunning and how that is related to the testing and iteration over and over, like testing it. Do we like it? Is it working how we want it to? No? Okay, let's change it. All right, let's test this. So getting them out of the mindset that this is something that they're trying to create that's for them, that's really special, and it's more of it has a purpose behind it because it is ultimately for the customer base or for the competition, or it has a purpose that is greater than just what I like or they like. So it's getting them out of that mindset, putting them solidly in a design process where it really is just how well is it functioning and can we improve that function in some way.
All right.
So looking at forwarding from that way. Yeah.
Okay. Jackie, you hosted one called Setting the Most Popular Boulders in the Gym. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, we talked about kind of like I had them choose what boulders they thought would be popular and explain why. And then we talked about what makes a popular problem because, you know, a lot of different things make a popular problem, including like how it looks, even if people don't understand that the reason they think it's cool is because they want to climb those holds, or, you know, where it is in the gym, how bright the holds are, how new the holds are, if the moves are, and so there's initial, like, what makes you attracted to the problem. And then there's like, okay, is it soft for the grade? That often makes a popular boulder problem. Or is it hard for the grade? Do like a good challenge for the grade, and that can make a popular boulder problem. You know, at the spot I've been setting for like 19 years, something like that. I've been setting for a long time. And it's, you know, I've paid a lot of attention over the years into what people seem to like. And of course, comfort, flow, feeling relatively safe, you know, asking appropriate risk decisions, given the climber's ability level, all those things. And then, you know, also for women, one of the things I focus on is like believing in yourself. You know, you have your own opinion. And if you've done research on that opinion, like watched other people climb with your customers, seeing what people like, is a valid opinion. So a lot of times we've done surveys in my gym and other gyms I've worked at where it's like, who's your favorite setter? And often the female setters at the gyms I worked at win by huge margins. So even though the male setters who I all like and who set good boulder problems in some groups I've worked with, don't really regard some of the women's climbs as good. There's another woman I worked with who was always, the men always kind of like just disregarded her climbs and didn't even want to forehand them. When we took votes, the customers always voted her as their second favorite setter. So she was getting like 20, whatever, 25, 30% of the vote, and the boys together were sharing like 10 or 15 for like 5 of them. So it's understanding how to use your opinion and your own, your own opinion and your own ability to make decisions on behalf of a lot of customers, not just yourself, and how that contributes to your popular builders contribute to the overall product of the gym. I kind of got rambly there.
If I had to ask you what makes a popular boulder, if I asked you like what color would it be, what angle would it be on, what types of holds would you use in your head, knowing all this stuff, what would be kind of your prime mix for the most popular boulder at the spot?
Oh man, at the spot. Okay, so let's see, what would make it the most popular boulder? So yeah, one of the cool things about climbing and one of the things that keeps you coming back is that you can have that I'm a superhero feeling on any grade. Every breakthrough you have, whether you're climbing V2 or V0 or you're climbing V10, you feel really cool sometimes doing certain moves or grabbing certain holds or being in a certain position. You feel strong, or it's like fun because it's different and interesting. So finding like a king line at the spot, like one of the most popular problems, essentially, whatever the boulder is, one of the most popular lines at the spot. If you walk in on the right, there's the beach wall, we call it. It's the big Walltopia wall. It's got a huge prow in the middle of it. And up the right side of that overhanging prow is kind of an overhanging arete thing. And if you have like a bunch of like big old like Kilter Kaiju, Kilter's my company, so obviously think that they're the best, but but also, they're also really well designed because Ian's an amazing designer. So really bunch of big, I like pink, like bright pink. 1126 is a really popular color. It just pops out of the wall really nicely. And then the grade. So for a grade that makes a really popular problem in the gym for us is like V4 or V5 and even V6, because those are grades that like a big chunk of our customers can climb on. So either people are projecting those grades, or they're like their middle of their session, they climb those grades, or they're like warming up on those grades depending on how good they are. And so if you have like a big, comfortable, flowy climb on these big, pretty, popping pink holds up this huge overhanging arete, like you get the cool factor, you get the fun moves because you can usually do like heel hooks or toe hooks or whatever in there. The holds are big and comfortable, so they're totally appropriate for warm up. You can do like big thuggy moves, but you can put intermediates between them so people can actually work on the climb if it's at their limit and still like figure out how to do those moves. And then they get the feeling of like exposure, but like because of the way that a red is, it tends to drop you straight onto your feet, which is like relatively safe. So you get it's aesthetically appealing. It's interesting to climb. You have interesting moves. It's appropriately challenging for the grade, and then it's relatively safe. So it kind of ticks those things off. And also you see it right when you walk into the gym. So that would be, that's a line at the spot where kind of whatever we put there, if it's well set, which it is by the time we're done forehanding it, it tends to be a really, really popular climb.
Nice. Danielle, your clinic was called A Day in the Life. What did you cover in that?
It's funny, Tyler, because you actually inspired some of my thought about this. Because when you set with us, at Crimpers, you said you were so impressed with our team about how everyone was very respectful and happy and good with each other.
Yeah.
And then you talked a little bit about how it was with you in setting. It was just a little bit more disciplined, and I think the head setter was more, I guess, I'm not going to say heavy-handed, but more directional with respect to how the climbs were put up.
Okay.
And so the purpose of A Day in the Life was to, I guess, give them insight into the depth and difficulty of our profession. And so to give an insight into the responsibilities that a day of professional setting is, and give them an idea of that you don't always get to set what you want, right? You're given an area, or you're given holes, or you're given like a type of climb sometimes. Let's say if there was too many crimpy climbs, let's say you have to do, balance your gym, and so let's have this set a little bit different. And so that was the initial goal and just to expose them to how setting is a very thoughtful process, very intentional in design, and very complex. That it's not just you go up and you put holds, which I think some of the ladies thought. They didn't realize the depth of what goes into putting up a climb. And I think that really shocked them, that it was that thought-provoking. And so that was my goal, is to just give them insight into, from the hard work and into the intense, I think, for me it is at least, very intense mental demands that setting always puts on me.
Okay. So Nicole, when you were putting together this session or this symposium, and there were other clinicians here, when you went looking for clinicians, who were you looking for, aside from obviously professional female setters, but what were you looking to provide to the people attending the symposium?
So we had this discussion early on with Danielle and Jackie, and they indicated that they thought the event would be most successful if we stuck with female influencers. So I pursued that direction for a while. I talked to a few different women, Jackie and Christine and Danielle. All three of them immediately jumped on board. I'm most familiar with Danielle because we're in the same region. She's attended a showdown at our gym in the past. She was an incredible competitor. She helped out a lot before and after. She was one of those people that was there early and stayed late, and she just gave such a great impression that I really wanted her to be a part of this if she had the desire. Christine, we went and actually set with out at ABP, so the Austin Bouldering Project. That was a really wonderful experience for us as people who run gyms. We were really impressed with ABP, and it was great to see the dynamic of her team and how she interacts with people. I am not familiar at all, or I wasn't familiar at all with Jackie. Jackie was Louis' suggestion. He had good contact with her, put me in touch, and she was great. And then beyond that, I wanted women to be around men who have high quality relationships with women. I thought that could be a really powerful thing. So to show women that there are a lot of men in the world who can work with women and who enjoy doing so and who see their value. So that's when I asked Chris. Oh, also the event just grew to a point where I needed more people. So I asked Chris, and he's my husband. I can basically force him to do anything. And then, I asked Louis, and he was game. And then actually Blake reached out to me and told me he was really psyched, really wanted to be involved, asked me if there was anything he could do. And I was like, you know what? I would love for you to teach something. We've met Blake before. He's a really great guy. And just to have 3 men on the team who are excited about the event, passionate about the event, I thought it was a great mix.
That's very cool. You had scheduled breakfast and dinners, and I know from, any clinic I've attended or anything like that, that's usually where the real conversation happens. What were the notable topics? What was everybody talking about whenever you had the chance to just kind of sit down and chat with everyone?
I ended up hanging out with some of the girls the next day. Even we went climbing at the Red for the next day and part of the next day. And it was really fun just to get to know everybody. Definitely, there's some topics that all female setters I've spoken with have encountered. Like, we all have men that we love to work with. We all have good crews, but we also all have experienced sexism in various forms. Not all of it's intentional, I'm sure. And it's always a sticky subject that no one really feels comfortable talking about. I mean, amongst other women, but like in general, it's a difficult thing to approach in the industry. So that came up a lot. And then just like kind of what Deyo was saying, like people's own experiences at their gyms, bad experiences people have had. And, one of the things that I would encourage people to do is just to be a little bit more outspoken, but also to have, done back research to be able to back up those outspoken opinions with, actual facts or experiences. So like one of the biggest things I try to encourage, especially younger setters, to do, like one of the girls was like awesome, good setter, got her stuff together, but also a bit like, just to use for lack of a better word, or maybe this is the best word, but like a bit fierce, because she'd had a lot of experiences where she felt really attacked and put down and not managed well and not helped and all these things that unfortunately I think everybody was able to relate to on some level. And so I definitely encourage, people to find their way to work around those things. And it's the sad truth is I don't think that every crew is going to be able to really incorporate a female setter successfully. I mean, it takes for a setting crew to work well with the gym, to work well with the other departments of the gym, to work well with itself, and then to have different types of setters on the crew successfully, and not just have it be like a kind of a dog style hierarchy as far as who's in charge. You have to have a good manager. And so because there's so few trained setters really in the country with management experience, it's a lot of gyms are lacking that. So it's still something that's forming. And then some of the other girls were head setters at their gym, and that's cool too. I mean, you need both, I think. So yeah, again, rambling.
Well, what's interesting, Tyler, is, when I was there, I had pneumonia and I was grumpy and exhausted, and just, I couldn't do much because physically I was just gone. And so at dinner, I didn't go. And so what I did was I was sleeping in my van outside. And so I just hang out at the gym until it closed. And I just would watch for hours people doing the climbs that the females set. And then I would get in conversations with people about route setting. And the main thing that I heard over and over again was that women felt that they couldn't set because they didn't climb hard enough. And to me, that's frustrating for me to hear from many angles, because then you're assuming that because someone's strong, they can set, and that everyone knows that that's not true. So to associate your self-worth as a setter with how hard you climb, I think is erroneous, and I really tried to expound upon that with the women, that it's it helps to be a strong climber, especially in the forerunning process, but it's not necessary. I think the most important thing is to know movement, and I think that sometimes the physical limitation that a woman setter might have is advantageous to understanding movement and movement setup, and just understanding your gym clients. And so it's not necessarily a negative if you don't climb hard, and it's not limiting to being a route setter if you don't climb really hard.
Completely.
That's the main thing that I got out.
That's interesting. Christine, yourself, anything?
Cool. Yeah, mostly I ended up talking, as I was saying, we were just kind of sharing stories. And I think that's an important one, that a lot of women that I run into, they usually are the only woman on their crew. And I think in some ways it's just nice to have that support of knowing that there's other women out there doing the same thing you are, and you're not completely isolated. Because I know that that's something that can be very easy on an all-male crew if you're the single female on there. There's just slightly different modes of communication often between men and women, and I think it's actually a very well documented thing. And I would encourage everyone to go look that up at some point. But it's something that I think women have a very hard time just communicating on the same level as the guys that are working around them. So when you get to kind of sit down with people that are in your own gender and have that same communication style, I think it's comforting, and I think it's also very empowering, because then you're like, oh, I'm not the only person that's having these struggles going through this. Suddenly I have a support network around me, people that are maybe on my side. So that was one thing that I thought that the women around me were really getting out of it, was just the knowledge that they're not alone, which I think is sometimes you think that you're the only woman around, and then you look around, you're like, oh, wow, actually every other gym has a woman on their crew, but why do we not know each other? Why is there not a network of us? Why is there not more support? If we all feel so alienated, we should almost be looking for each other. I don't know if there's a solution to that one.
Well, events like this, I mean, there was probably more
this is it.
women sitting in that room than have sat together ever. I mean, there was.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I think that broke records.
You're all head root setters, or Nicole yourself, you of course run your businesses. So you've kind of seen the gamut of the management structure from your basic root setter all the way up to the top of the company between the four of you. Everything you've talked about with the struggles that female setters face is definitely a common story. You hear about it everywhere, and the SheSets Symposium has been a great step to help women kind of have a more prominent place, and doing a lot to strengthen women's setting from the angle of supporting female setters in the community. But I'm really curious for, the gym that doesn't have any female setters, or the gym that knows it's a problem, that they need more females, or they know it's in their best interest as a business to get more female setters. What is it that the industry keeps screwing up to keep making this such an issue? Like, at what point in the business, what position is it, where in the model do things need to be fixed for women to become a more prominent factor in the setting community?
Whew. I'm going to run with this one pretty early because I just, so my setting team is half women. So I have 3 ladies that are on the crew other than myself. And I know that at least talking to them versus talking to the men that I manage, there's just a very different, as I keep going on about communication style, but some of the ladies just have different needs. And I think Jackie already mentioned that there's not a lot of management experience within the head setter realm. And I think that actually probably plays a big part into how a lot of the female setters don't really want to stick around because they don't feel super supported. And I think that if you had somebody that was in charge of the program that was a good manager, they'd kind of recognize these problems before you lose the potential women that could be filling this need that their gym has. So I almost think that if we were bigger, as we grow as a bigger industry and start recognizing that there is more of a need for people to have this management training, I think we'll begin to hold on to some of the women. And I think if we hold on to more of them, we'll see more women realizing that this can be a successful path, and we'll get more of them applying.
Yes. I agree with that.
I also want to add, this is kind of the same thing again, but, on that note, the managers see, a lot of the women I have in my program, and I think Deyo's the same, we pretty much plucked from the ether and turned into root setters. And that's something I've chosen to do. If somebody even expresses a tiny amount of interest, I'm make them come in and force them to learn to root set, basically, which is sort of reverse sexism, I guess, because I do not do that for all the men that are interested, although I have trained several men to set as well at our gym. But anyway, it's cultivating your program. And cultivating your program is taking extra time with every employee, regardless of gender, to figure out what their needs are, what their communication style is, how they fit into your program, if they fit into your program, and how you can try to help them succeed. And it's again, those are management skills. And I definitely don't want the conversation to turn into people thinking, oh, this person needs special treatment because they're a woman. This person, they need different things, and they're just whiny or whatever it is. It's not that. It's just that being a good manager, running a good program is figuring out everybody's needs, everybody's styles, and working those together. And understanding if they're going to work or not work, and supporting your employees. And that's definitely something that you have to be more than just a strong rock climber to do. So.
Yeah, and I think also...
I think you just have to do it. You just have to say, I need representation of 50+% of who's coming into the gym. It's just, if you're in a company, you have places that need to be filled, and that's just one that has to be filled, and I think you just have to do it.
Yeah, and I think what we have also is not only is it managing each of the individual employees, but it's managing the team as a whole. What I'll often get pushback from my male setters is they'll be like, oh, well, that girl on the team, she's not pulling her weight, she's not forerunning the hardest climbs. And I have to remind them that there are multiple ways to contribute to the team, and that you don't always have to be the hardest climber. She will clean up the area while they're forerunning the harder climbs. And it's reminding them that this is still a part of the job, and it's part of the job description, and she's not slacking when she's not climbing hard. But I think that without a manager reminding them, I think you get a lot of bitterness from the climbers that are tired at the end of the day forerunning and are like, I have to climb this V9. Why is that setter not climbing them? They're not pulling their weight, and they don't really want them on the team. And I think that you get a lot of pushback because of that. And I think a good manager will stop that antagonism before it can become actually damaging to the team or to the setter that is not climbing as hard. And I think it'll also stop that mindset from developing further, where you get that idea that you can't be a setter unless you are a strong climber.
Yes. Because, why, Danielle? Because half our customer base tends to be women and newer climbers.
Yeah, and we don't have testosterone, so we're just, we have to work a lot harder and build our muscles.
Yeah. But like, for real, like Danielle said earlier, women maybe are more suited to judge the difficulty differences in these lower grades of climbs, or how hard moves are actually going to feel to women. And because climbing gyms are growing at such a rapid rate, we're getting tons of new climbers in these gyms, and we need to give them challenges that are manageable for them. And having climbers, like having 6 guys that climb V12 is great when you're trying to forerun the hardest boulders, but they need to be able to differentiate those lower grades, V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, from each other. And over again, like, that's a challenge, even for men I know who have been studying for a long time. Like, the combination of a smaller hold and a bigger move don't always make them automatically think this is a hard thing or understand why. So, pulling your own weight is partially serving the customers. And again, like, somebody that accurately can serve your customers that you're trying to get into the sport and keep in the sport is super valuable.
Yeah, and a V2 is equally important as a V9. So to say that, it's more energetically demanding to do a V9, but it's just as important to forerun the V2s. So
and the
maybe
V2s
have the there's no more. I think that goes with the sort of strength ego of thinking that the harder climbs have more importance, but they don't.
Yeah.
Nicole, I wanted to kind of wrap up asking you, now that the event is done and the months and months of organizational work is over and everybody's gone home and we're getting to have conversations like this, as the organizer, first of all, are you considering hosting one again? And if you are, what kind of things have you taken from this first event that you want to improve on for the next one?
So first off, without a doubt, yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
We're not just going to evaporate. That would be a travesty. I think the first event went surprisingly well. I wouldn't say that I'm very good at this kind of thing. I was really happy with the response. I think there's some really small things that I would change if I had to do it over again, but we had a lot of moving parts. This was scheduled for a different location initially. We had to move it, and things got challenging. I think I want to make it, or I know, I want to make it bigger. I'm not exactly sure how I want to do that just yet. I don't want to give too much away, but
okay.
I'm working on it. I'm pretty excited, but I want to see it grow. I want to see it become an annual thing, and then beyond that, I would like to see us continue to offer a clinic schedule and work with people around the country so that women and actually even potentially men have access to high quality route setting courses.
That's really cool. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for your time. Christine, thanks so much for talking to me tonight.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Jackie, I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler.
Danielle, thanks a lot. It was great to talk to you again. It feels like it's been years.
I know it has, Tyler.
And
it was great talking with you.
And Nicole, of course, thanks for talking, but also thanks for putting on an event that I think the community really needed, and I think we're all looking forward to it happening again.
Yeah, I appreciate the support. Thanks.
That's it for this week's episode of Plastic Weekly. Thanks to Nicole Brown, Danielle Goodspeed, Christine Deyo, and Jackie Hueftle for answering my questions, and thanks to you guys for listening. Plastic Weekly is presented and produced by me, Tyler Norton. If you like this episode, please leave a review on iTunes. You've got no idea how much it helps the podcast. Or like I mentioned earlier, you can now support me directly through my Patreon at patreon.com/plasticweekly. Or go to plasticweekly.com and click the donate button. Make sure you visit our website to find footnotes, references, and other bonus content related to our episodes. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can leave a comment at plasticweekly.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can send me an email to tyler@plasticweekly.com with your comments, concerns, questions, compliments. Just tell me you're out there. Somewhere. Good luck to everyone competing this weekend, including at the Lead and Speed World Cups, as well as the Paraclimbing Cup, all in Edinburgh, Scotland. We'll be thinking about you. Talk to you next week.
Hold on. Anders, you cannot come in here right now.
You know where my pants are?
Sorry, guys.